Welcome to FitBody Lifestyle, the show where we dive deep into the world of fitness, health, business, relationships, and the art of living a balanced life. I'm Jami.
And I'm Greg, and we're here to give you the benefit of our experiences in the fitness and bodybuilding industry, the corporate world, running a business, personal development, and building healthy relationships.
Whether you're sweating it out in the gym, hustling in your business, or seeking balance in your everyday life, you're in the right place.
So lace up those sneakers and grab that water bottle, and let's get ready to transform our minds, our bodies, and our lives.
Welcome back to another episode of FitBody Lifestyle, and this is part 2 of our episodes talking about choosing your division and choosing your show. And today we're going to talk about the NPC versus the NPC natural shows, and then also the divisions within and how those are going to differ. So it's going to help you make some good decisions for this year. Of course, I'm here with my partner in crime.
Your
Hello.
partner in contests.
My partner in contests, my partner in, yes, in everything. Papa Bear. Greg
Hi.
DeBernard, hello.
Hi.
All right, you want to dive right into the subject? So I know we have a lot we want to talk about.
Yeah. And so I think where we start out is, the natural versus the NPC shows. So they're both NPC, but there's the shows that are natural or designated NPC natural. And the NPC natural shows have been around for a while. The Ben Weider show is one of the most the most established shows that's been around for a number of years. We've had athletes compete at that show for at least the last 4 or 5 years that I can think of.
It's been around a lot longer, but yeah.
Yeah, and it has been around a lot longer. I'm just thinking about times when we've had athletes there. Really just the distinction and the emphasis here this year is the NPC and IFBB wanted to provide an outlet for athletes that are natural. So the structure and the restrictions on the athletes that qualify for the natural shows is pretty robust. And I'm not going to recite all that stuff to you. I would just say go to NPC News Online.
Well, let's before
go
we
ahead.
go there,
All right.
let's talk. I want to kind of dive into the differences and things like
Okay.
that, and then we can give resources and
Go ahead.
everything.
All right.
But I did want to mention one other thing. I know we were talking about NPC, but there's also the CPA, which is the Canadian Physique Alliance, which is the Canadian version of the NPC. So and the interesting thing is they've actually had a lot more natural shows than we've had in the States. But then also NPC Worldwide also has natural shows as well. And then just quickly, I know we did do a Fusion Hack last week to talk a little bit about your resources on the NPC News Online. If you're looking for those natural shows, they are under a separate list. So when you go to the schedules, you can click on that and you can click on the NPC natural list. And I know we talked a little bit about if there is a natural show combined with a regular NPC show, then those would be on different days. They might be on the same weekend, but on different days. I know we've mentioned that before. There are also only 2 pro qualifiers that we know of for this year. So far, right? There may be others added, but the Ben Weider, which of course you had already mentioned. And then we're really excited. The new one is going to be at the Pittsburgh Pro. There's also going to be a pro qualifier specifically for natural athletes at that show. So we're really excited. That's brand new for this year, and that show's got a lot of really, really cool things.
It's going to be a big show this year.
It's going to be a great show. So we're excited about that. So those are
the Pittsburgh is one of those shows that is the Olympia is the Olympia, and I mean it is the Super Bowl, the pinnacle of bodybuilding. The next one would be the Arnold. This is taking place at the end of February, for first part of March, and then Pittsburgh has always been that show that is kind of that next generation or that next level show that has a tremendous legacy. I mean, it is Jim Mannion's show, the president of the IFBB NPC. It's been around for a number of years, but this year they're adding prize money to the pro categories.
A lot of prize money. Which is going to attract some big names. Like if you're wanting to go and watch a show, this is the show to watch. It's going to be fun.
And you're at the headquarters. I mean, it's the difference between, sorry for making a religious reference here, but it's the difference between going to a Catholic church in Rome versus going to a Catholic church in Salt Lake City, Utah. Yeah, or Boise. Yeah. So it's just going to be a different experience for you because you're really at one of the meccas of bodybuilding in America, at least in the world. I wouldn't say in America, I'd say in the world.
In the world.
Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. So, so I think we just kind of want to explore this a little bit now that there are a lot more options when it comes to the natural shows. And really, first I want to just help people understand like what's the difference between the two.
And can we say one other thing before we get into that, the difference between the two? In addition to we talked about the NPC side of things, but on the IFBB side of the things, the pro side of things, there are a number of natural shows this year. I can't remember the number, and I just went through and tallied them.
I wanted to say it was like 3 to 5.
No, it was more than that.
Was it more than that?
Yeah, it's more than that. It's. I want to say it's about 10, 10 or around 10 or so. But don't quote me on that. You can go and do the same thing I did, which is go and count them on the IFBB Pro Schedule site because they do say natural on there. But actually, why don't you talk about the difference? I'm going to see if I can pull that up because then I can tell you exactly what
Okay,
the number
perfect.
is.
Okay, yes. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the difference. Okay, so the regular NPC shows, it does not mean that because people are doing a regular NPC show that they're not natural. There'll be plenty of people that are natural athletes still competing there. They have been competing there. There's just, and we're going to talk a little bit about like some of the different things that are banned. And then of course we'll give you some resources to see what all is banned on the natural shows. But it doesn't mean if you're competing at the regular NPC shows that you're automatically enhanced. So let's just put that out there. So I think that's an important thing to consider. And at the same time, for those people that, it's really important that they are 100%, not enhanced in any way, shape, or form, and that they're competing against other athletes that are not enhanced in any way, shape, or form. That's where those natural shows come into play. So that's where, I do believe there'll be a lot of people that compete on both sides of the fence, and that's totally okay too. It's just to give you other options to see what fits both the best. Now, when we talk about, people that maybe would not be eligible to compete in a natural show, that doesn't, again, mean that they are necessarily even using anabolics. There's a lot of things that are going to be banned for natural competitors that are over-the-counter types of things, fat burners, diuretics. There are a number of things that are going to be banned. So even like marijuana products, CBD products, like things like that. So I know I've talked to people that have come to me and, should I compete natural? Sometimes we'll have some of these discussions. Do you use any of these things?
And have you used any of these things in the last 3 years?
The last 3 years. So it's 3 years that you need to have not used any of these types of things. And the list is extensive and
pretty extensive.
Yeah, and we'll give you where you can find that list. So it's something to consider. Also, like if you're someone who's utilizing TRT or hormone replacement, which, a lot of us, including myself, being almost 55 now, I
can't believe you acknowledge that.
Why? I acknowledge it all the time.
You only look like you're 15, not 55.
Please. Thank you, honey. We actually went to dinner with a friend last night, and she was asking about that. She goes, "What about HRT?" And we were like, "Nope, that you can't be doing that." She's like, darn, I wouldn't be able to do it. So, these are all things, just to think about. So if someone's not competing on the natural show, it might be that they're utilizing some of these other things. I did want to mention though, that I know that they do make exceptions. So, a lot of the things that are on the list, the banned list, I'll use insulin, for example. There are people, and I'm not recommending this, there are people that utilize insulin to help with muscle growth. That is banned. If you're a diabetic and you're using insulin for your life, that's obviously much different. So you can get an exception for that. So you would have to, send proof of that to the NPC or IFBB office and then get that exception made. And obviously there are other things that are on the banned list that are, people are utilizing for health purposes. It has nothing to do with bodybuilding. And I know there's been exceptions made for some of those types of things. So I did want to mention that as well.
Yeah, and I think it's called a TUE form, which is the exception of policy.
Say the
TUE,
I was going to say it phonetically so that people.
Tango Uniform Echo.
Okay.
Or Tom Uncle Edward.
So that's the form if you needed to send that in for the exception in those types of instances.
And the NPC site does specify the circumstances where they will consider that form as an exception. But it's things like the athlete would experience a significant impairment to health if the prohibited substance were withheld. The use of the prohibited substance would produce no additional enhancement of performance. There are no reasonable therapeutic alternatives or other alternatives. And here's the note. Hormone replacement therapy, HRT, for example, supplementing with prescribed testosterone in any form to raise testosterone levels due to natural decreases that occur with aging, even if just to elevate levels to within normal limits, is not considered a medical exception. So that's the TRT piece.
Right. And that's why I think it's important to, if somebody is thinking about this, really go on and read this so that you make sure that you qualify for this, so that you're not getting yourself into a situation where you've done all this hard work and then you get to the show and you're not able to compete.
Right. And when we said 3 years, by the way, is 3 years for like anabolics, is 3 years for hormone and metabolic modulators, insulin, peptide hormones. SARMs is 3 years, thyroid hormones 3 years, beta-2 agonists is 6 months, diuretics and masking agents is 6 months, stimulants is 6 months, insulin manipulators 6 months, intoxicating substances are 12 hours before polygraph, muscle implants or injections of any kind, those
are completely banned.
Those are completely banned.
And that's also banned in the regular NPC. So yeah, other than breast augmentation. This is muscle enhancement. So that's why that doesn't fall into that category, because it's not really enhancing the muscle necessarily.
It is a fairly extensive list, is what I would say.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, you mentioned the polygraph. So just, I'm not crazy about it, but there's really no great way. If they're doing blood or urine, that's only going to, people can use substances and stop it.
Masking agents, right.
Masking agents, or just stop within enough time to make sure it doesn't show up, but then they still get the benefits of it. So kind of polygraph is what we got. Obviously, they're not the most accurate things in the world. So, if you do fail, it is a 1-year ban. The first time you fail. If you fail it the second time, it's 3 years that you're banned. And then if you fail it a third time, you're banned for life. So, I know that there's people that have come to me and they're like, oh, I haven't used this, but they're not complete with it. I'm like, don't do it.
Right.
If there's a question, just stick with the NPC side of things. If you're 100% sure, you're 100% natural, go for it. Like,
look, we have seen athletes compete in the NPC, not NPC natural, that are natural, and they've done it for years, and they're competitive, and they do really well. So it's not a barrier to entry for, and I think the issue is well, does that even the playing field and stuff? Well, in the natural side of things, it does even the playing field. On the open side on the NPC regular side, it's you can be around enhanced athletes, but man, there's such a variety in terms of what is enhanced and what enhancements people are doing or what PEDs people are doing. So it's a very broad range. And when you see, stimulants are on here as 6 months. Well, caffeine is a stimulant. So I don't think that's really what's meant by a stimulant on this, but I do think that, there's
they're
different
looking
ways.
Really at fat burners.
Right.
And, again, these
Like
are over the counter
clenbuterol
thing, or even over the counter.
Right.
They're talking about, things, there's a lot of fat burners that people utilize that they're not prescription.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think it's really important to make sure if this is something you're wanting to do, that you're doing it correctly.
Yeah, and are we talking about resources now, or do we? Because I kind of already gave the
jump over
NPC. Okay, so yeah, if you just want to go to the NPC site and there's a one pager basically, or one website web page listing of the banned substances. On the Ben Weider site, there is a more extensive list of the banned substances. The reason I like going to that site is because there's a bigger breakdown of it. It's a several page document. And by the way, going back to something I told you, there are 20 natural IFBB shows.
Oh, wow. That's
But that
exciting.
includes international and the US. So
That's so exciting.
yeah, but 20, I mean, that's a lot of shows.
Yeah.
So there's a definite interest level out there for this side of the competition community, and I do think that is one of the focal points of this, is to make the community inclusive and not so exclusive, where if you're only doing these substances, you can only compete. So it's to provide athletes with another outlet.
Oh, something I forgot to mention, to qualify to compete at the pro qualifiers, the Ben Weider, the Pittsburgh, and any others that come up, you
Right.
just have to have competed prior in a natural show. So if you've only competed in a regular NPC show, that does not qualify you to do those shows. So just make sure that you plan ahead. There's plenty of shows that have a natural option. So just make sure you plan ahead and that you've done a show prior. We actually had that situation come
Yeah.
up with an athlete at the Ben Weider, where she had not done the show prior and we didn't realize it, and then she ended up not being able to compete. So that's an important thing I wanted
Right.
to mention.
Yeah, that was a lesson learned.
Yes.
So where else do we go from there then on natural versus NPC?
What else do I want to talk about? I've really I think a lot of it that I wanted to cover, I kind of covered really quickly just now. I think it was a lot just making sure that people understand, that I think when people think of natural versus not natural, they're thinking about anabolics. They're thinking about very specific
Right.
types of compounds. I did want to talk a little bit about on the regular NPC side of things. One of the cool things, and we of course did the breakdown of the different divisions, and we talked about the new Fit Model division, of course, which the great thing is it's a very entry-level division. So if you're somebody who, you enjoy using CBD, or you enjoy, or you're utilizing some hormone replacement, or some of the other things that are on this list, or you really like to use, you love your fat burner that you've been using, or whatever the situation is, but you're size, shape, all of those things are more on the natural side. For the ladies, it's really great. So there is that Fit Model division. So that gives that other option and opportunity. So did want to talk about that. And, I also, I know I said this, but I also wanted to stress, just because you're not competing in the natural side doesn't mean that you're enhanced or that you're taking anabolic steroids.
Correct.
That's the big thing I really wanted to talk about. So that there's not necessarily like that stigma on that. The other thing I wanted to discuss a little bit was, if you, for example, if you're a natural athlete, and we have, some of these athletes that are, let's say, their structure really lends itself to, some of the more muscular divisions, like we've talked about in our episode where we broke down the divisions, figure, wellness, for example. A lot of times, if they're natural athletes and they don't have the kind of size and density to compete in the regular NPC, that's where I'm really excited about, the opportunity in these natural shows.
I I I love the opportunity, and I think that's really the biggest thing. The biggest point of emphasis on this is that it provides that outlet. It provides something for everybody. So, you think you go to a store, and I'm trying to think of a store that would qualify for this. It's like going to a specialized store versus going to a department store that has different things for different people, and that's really what this bodybuilding community is working to be, is an inclusive community where there's an outlet and a vehicle for everybody to be able to get on stage and showcase the hard work that they've put in over the years on stage. And so really the natural part is not new for the NPC. It's not novel, but it is something that now this year has
More
expanded.
accessible.
Yeah, more accessible.
Mhm.
And because look, we remember when Ben Weider was the show, and it was one show once a year, and that was it. That was your shot. And so now with Pittsburgh coming in as another pro qualifier, it gives people that opportunity
And a
to.
ton
Yeah.
in Canada.
Yes, right.
Mhm.
it gives people that opportunity to get out there. And I suspect that there will be more pro qualifiers for natural. I don't know how many more, but I do suspect there will be more pro qualifiers for that as the division grows. And if it's a division that you're considering, the question is why not? And help make the division what it is. And again, as we talked about a little bit in the fit model division, being in on the ground floor, this is not the ground floor of natural. Okay. I'm not gonna pitch it as that, but I will say this is the first year where we've seen an emphasis on natural, I'll say more of an emphasis, and a marketing of that division to more people,
and more promoters.
That's right.
Picking up that, adding that to
That's
the
right.
shows.
I mean, 20 shows at the pro level is not a small number.
No, that's a
And
lot.
I just started counting some of the shows in the NPC, and I mean, I stopped counting at about
Is that
16.
20 only in bikini, or is that 20 total?
Bikini.
So that's 20 only in bikini.
Correct.
So there's natural in all the other divisions as
Right.
well. So that's
And I don't know what the numbers are for that. So yeah.
right.
Yeah, good call out. Sorry, I should have pitched it as 20 in bikini.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know that you're going to see that many in men's open bodybuilding, but I don't know. I haven't gone
Well,
through
there's
the
not that
list.
many men's open bodybuilding shows, period.
That's true.
Right.
That's true.
There's more bikini shows than there are for any other division currently.
Correct.
So the other thing I just did want to talk about is that we have the last show of the season that we went to, not counting nationals, of course, was at the Atlantic Coast. Tim
Right.
Gardner. We love Tim Gardner's shows.
Yes, we
He
do.
does an
Shout out to Wings of Strength.
Yes.
And we
Well,
still
no.
owe you pickleball
Well, it
time,
was
right?
Tim Gardner
Or
Productions.
Tim Gardner Production, I'm sorry. But
Yeah.
it's Wings of Strength that we owe the pickleball to, right?
Yeah.
And the challenge from Tarek.
Yes.
Tarek, we're waiting for you.
Yeah. No, but Tim Gardner's Atlantic Coast.
That's right.
That is towards the end of the year every year. And so we were there at the end of the year. This past year, they had it was really great the way he had the show weekend structured. So he had the first day was the regular NPC, and then half of the pros were on that day. And then on the second day was the natural NPC and the other half of the pros. So we were there both days, all day. We got to really see, the quality of the athletes, how the show ran. And it was an amazing show.
It was.
I was incredibly impressed with the natural show.
With the quality
of the athletes, the quality of the judging. And I mean, these athletes, they're no joke. I
No.
mean, these natural athletes were bringing it for
Yep.
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, so, we were obviously there for both days and getting to see the quality of the athletes on both days. And the quality of the athletes on both days were just absolutely incredible. But, specifically on that natural day. So I think it just really goes to show like what you can accomplish.
I also think beyond what you accomplish, I mean, part of it's your why. Why are you in this sport? And I am not going to open the can of worms about PEDs versus non-PD, anabolics or no. That we can talk about another time, perhaps. I don't know that it's even worthwhile to talk about. I think that's a personal choice.
I think people might like us to talk about it at some point.
Okay,
but
and we okay, then we'll talk about it at some
I've talked
point.
about it on other podcasts, but
Yeah.
we haven't gone too deep. Well, we did a couple episodes actually on hormone replacement, and then on some we've talked a little bit about it.
Yeah, and the decision to do that is a personal decision, and it's not. I mean, it's not. Let's face it; it is not unique to bodybuilding. PEDs are present in all of sports to a certain degree, and it's so. We'll just leave that at that. Whether you do or whether you don't, it's your personal choice. And again, whether you do or whether you don't, if you do, it will create one avenue of opportunities. If you don't, it will create another avenue of opportunities. And I think the difference is that what we're seeing in the natural shows this year is that there's more opportunity now than there was in prior years if you choose not to do those things. And that's a tremendous, that's really cool. And again, the quality that you pointed out at Atlantic Coast, and Tim Gardner, thank you for promoting that show and doing such a great job. You saw a caliber of athlete on stage that was, world class.
Mhm.
I don't know how else to say it. They looked really good. And so if that is something that resonates with you, I think it all starts with your why. Why do you want to do this? And, there are health benefits and health risks that go with this sport
With
in
both
general,
sides of
and with
things.
both
Yeah.
sides. So, it is a question of what risks are you willing to assume. And again, I go back to, why are you doing this, and what do you want out of it? What's the goal? What's the purpose? If it's speaking to something that's inside of you, a lot of natural people that I know, and we've coached a number of natural athletes, they are adamant about the natural part of it, and they want to be able to stay natural for personal reasons, philosophical reasons. It's just what they feel is the right thing to do, and good, do that. That's the right reason.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and I do love that you said that there are, benefits and risks on both sides of things. I mean, you know, there are, like even on the enhanced side of things, it doesn't, and that's why I talked about that a little bit in the beginning. That doesn't necessarily mean you're hulking out and you're taking a bunch of anabolic steroids.
Right.
You could be taking things that are health enhancing that also are
Like TRT or
exact
HRT, right? Yeah.
exactly. Or I mean, there's a lot of peptides now that people are using. I mean, we can talk a lot about the GLPs. There if you're using those for the purpose of, staying lean or getting lean for a show, then on the natural side, those are banned.
Right.
On the enhanced side,
If you're using them,
they're not.
and what we don't know, and there's a few areas of interest here. The GLPs is one of them, because if you're using them for weight loss only, which is how they're classified on the NPC site, that's a no-no for natural. But if you're using them prescribed because you're diabetic, or you're prescribed that because you're dealing with PCOS or some other condition, we don't know. And I'll be honest with you, we don't
Right. That
know.
would be one you
Yeah,
would need to
yeah,
submit
and that'd be
in.
that TUE form.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, again, there are different, this is such a complex conversation, and I think it's very unique to the individual. And, I think it's, for each individual, I would go in, or, if it's something you're considering, really read through the document. If you have questions on certain things, or if you're taking anything that's on the list, but for, other health purposes, I would send in a message and ask the question,
Right.
or send in the form and see if it gets approved or denied. And then there's your answer. It never hurts to ask,
Nope.
if it's something you're interested in doing. But if you're somebody like me that I want to enhance in any way I can, just well, I mean, my longevity, my health,
Yes.
you know what I
But
mean.
when
So
you
it's
say enhance, I mean, yeah, the you would be
well,
using, yeah,
right. I'm not.
yeah.
I'm not competing or bodybuilding at this point because I've retired at this point. So for me, it's more longevity based and things like that. But some of the things that I do utilize, including my HRT and things like that, would be, against what's on the list.
Right.
But and that's my own personal, right? And again, like I'm not doing this to be a big bodybuilder, but that's why I wanted to make that, that separation. So people do understand that just because people competing at the NPC in the original NPC, they're not, it's not that they're, you know, taking the laundry list of
No,
things.
no,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not like they're going down to yeah, they're not like walking drugstores. And I do think as we see this evolve, there may be some refinement of that. I think about the WADA standards, the World Anti-Doping Association, and then the U.S. version of that, the U.S. Anti-Doping Association, and the evolution and interpretation of those rules and restrictions. And I do think you'll see that in the natural category as different information. Because, for example, HRT is one that comes into mind, is that I just don't see how HRT would be a performance enhancing per se. Progesterone, for example, you may take progesterone to be able to sleep at night if you're low on that. And
Me.
yeah, and but I don't. So
I would never
yes,
sleep if I didn't take my progesterone. That's
yeah,
why that's a big thing. And that's
yeah.
why exactly for me, my health would suffer if I didn't take my progesterone because I would probably sleep 2 or 3 hours a night,
Right.
So, I mean,
So
it's
I
a
do
personal
think,
decision.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I do think that there may be, and I'm not going to predict this. I'm not going to promise this. I'm just going to say that there may be opportunity to refine those restrictions to figure out, okay, what is it that we really want to accomplish on this? Because there are some restrictions in the natural world for bodybuilding that are stricter than WADA standards and stricter than US ADA standards. So, and I understand why, because in this industry in particular, the need to make sure that there is no really performance enhancement other than, look, protein is a performance enhancer, creatine is a performance enhancer. So, but protein is a basic building block to eating. So, you can't restrict everything. You got to allow people to have certain things. And I wonder whether
It's like, where do you draw the line?
exactly,
Where's the gray
yeah.
area?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of things that are gray area, but we also know, I go back to thinking about, Lance Armstrong and the Tour de France, and how they pulled all of his titles because they found out he was blood doping, and these elite athletes have found ways to get that edge. You will see, I think that's part of the reason why the rules are so strict in the way they are, because athletes are looking for an edge. And I get that.
Or
I mean,
everybody's looking for the loophole, the
that's
way
right.
around the
Right.
rule. Yeah.
The way around the rule, or the way, or the area that isn't in the rules.
Right.
And we see this in training techniques, and Drew's been on and talked about that, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit more. But I do know, the an adjacent aspect to this is, everybody's looking for that training trick or that training edge. And at the end of it, it's time, consistency, intensity, focus. Those are the things that really add up. So, when it comes to PEDs and enhancements like this, if everybody could do them and get big, then we'd have a lot more people on stage. So it's not a question of everybody doing them. It's a question of, what's your genetic makeup? How do your genes express when these things introduce?
How long have you been
Right.
training? How hard have you been training? What was your background? And we talked a lot about this at dinner last night. If you're somebody who, started training at a very young age, or was playing a lot of sports at a
Right.
very young age, a lot of times you have an advantage, because during that time of that your body was still developing, you were, kind of setting that, muscle density, the bone density, like all of those things, So, I mean, there's advantages to be had both in terms of general genetics, how you grew up, how active you've been your whole life, what types of exercises you've been doing, how long you've been training, how intense you've been I mean, there's just all these factors that quite honestly play a bigger role than any of these substances that we've been
Right.
talking about. I mean, when we start talking about something like, creatine giving you an edge, you know what I mean? We're talking about like,
Yes.
it's so minute, compared to, and it's just funny a lot of times when people are looking for the magic pill or the magic this, and yes, of course, there are some, there are substances out there that give, edge, that give, in some cases, extreme edge. And at the end of the day, it's not a substitute for the basics, getting enough sleep, training hard,
Eating right.
making sure that you're recovering properly, right? Proper nutrition, all of those things. So, at the end of the day, I see so many times people start getting so diverted and focused on, these other things that they lose sight of really, let's get back to basics,
Well,
So,
and I will tell you, it's interesting. So as a kid, I got my first weightlifting set, I want to say at about 10 years old. And it was a set of, they were injection molded weights. And most people listening, what is an
I
injection
was going to
molded
say,
weight?
most people probably don't even know what that is.
It's a piece of plastic that they basically
Put concrete
inject it
in.
in a foam and concrete like substance to get to the right weight. And my dad bought me a set of these weights from a garage sale. And I had this little bench set up in our basement in Salt Lake City, Utah. And the basement had this it was basically like two intersecting hallways. So I had to set up the bar at the intersection of those hallways in order to be able to weightlift. Okay. And I got this little booklet that came with the weights, and I was like looking at these basic exercises, and that's how I started. That's how I started weightlifting. I did not start weightlifting with an intent to get on stage, but make no mistake, I had the muscle and fitness magazines in my house. I had, Arnold Schwarzenegger and others on the cover, and looking at these bodybuilders, and that was one of the things that drove me. But I was willing to, I mean, I didn't have a timeline. I didn't have a goal. I wanted to, I wanted to look like that. And so I was just like working out. But in our world now, we live in this microwave culture where people want things tomorrow, and they'll see something on Instagram that, a fitness influencer that is this or that has competed, and people want that now. How many times do we get a person who says, listen, I got a 5-year plan. Have you ever had this? I have a 5-year plan. It starts here with year one, and I want to start building up. And my 5-year plan is that I want to get on stage in 5 years after I've put on enough muscle and enough conditioning to where I can walk on stage and feel proud of the package that I've put on. Have you ever had that concept?
Never 5 years. Never 5 years. I mean, I've had a year maybe.
Yeah.
I'll take a year,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do think the year, I've had some people say I'll take a year or 2 years, but then inevitably what happens is that after that first year, they're like, okay,
When am I
when are we getting on
competing?
stage? And
And that's okay
and
too.
that is okay.
And
Yeah.
and
We're
we talked
not saying it, oh, go
Well,
ahead.
and we
Yeah.
also talked about in our last week's episode, we talked about the different divisions, and that does lend itself, especially now, with the Fit Model division, you've got, a lot of divisions, so that if you are a beginner, you can go and
Right.
compete,
And you can progress through the divisions.
yeah, and that's, I think that's kind of cool, because I know at the end of the day, a lot of people use competing as a way to stay focused on their fitness goals, on their physique goals. They want to look good, feel good, things like that. So that's what's really nice about it, is that it gives you like those goals along the way of stepping on stage at different phases of your journey, when that's okay too. Like, you don't have to take 5 years.
Right. And I'm not saying you do. I'm just saying that it's just interesting that people don't, take that approach to thing, that 5-year plan, which is really a strategy. That this is my strategy, and a 1-year goal is not a strategy. That's a goal for a year. But I think that, if you're listening to this and you're saying, I thought you guys were talking about natural versus not natural, and you're right, we are. And the reason why this is so important is because I do think is, if you're out there and you're listening and you're thinking about competing, and you're natural and you just have never done any of these substances, these are discussions and decisions that you have to have and you have to make at some point about, what is it that you want and how willing are you to do that. So,
Well, you could also
yeah,
start out natural, and then
that's
if you
right.
decide,
And
there's
we've had that happen.
yeah, there's something that you want to utilize, that's on that list, then maybe you switch over. That's okay too.
That is.
The one thing I do encourage people is, if you're not truly natural, don't compete in the natural
Yeah.
shows. Like, let's all be, there's plenty of opportunity outside of them. Let's all be honest. And I've known of people that have competed in the natural shows, and kind of found their way around certain things. And I just think, let's all be honorable.
Yeah. Well, and that word honor and the word ethics are things that we could use a little bit more of. So I do think that's a very good ask of people, and maybe a challenge to people. It should not be a challenge to be honorable. It should not be a challenge to be truthful or ethical. It should be something that you want to do. And look, if you've done those substances and you made that choice, then great. That's a choice that you made. Don't take a spot away from somebody else, or try to game the system because you think you can get around it.
That's a hollow victory.
It really is. It really is. And if you're okay with that, well, maybe there's some other questions you need to be asking yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's that. I think at the end of the day, like, I think the whole purpose of competing is to better ourselves and
Yes.
to grow as a person, whether it be physically, mentally, emotionally. I believe that all of those things really go together. So when we approach things from an honorable
From a place of integrity.
and place of integrity, then we can walk away no matter what we placed in any particular show, and be proud of ourselves, and then continue our journey and continue to grow and thrive, and show up better.
As we've talked about the philosophy of bodybuilding, we have said this before, is that bodybuilding is not life, but it can make your life better. And it can make your life better by building in habits, by building in routines, by building in a sense of self-worth and self-confidence, and a knowledge that you can do hard things and that you can overcome those adverse things, and the difficulty of going into the gym when you don't want to go. The emphasis of nutrition, of sleep, of rest, recovery, of all these things that go into making your life that much better. So bodybuilding is not life, but it can make your life better. And within that zone, you've got to then go that next stage of, why am I competing? Is it about being the next best version of me, which is really what it should be. When you think about the concept of bodybuilding and not body built, it is, how do I continue to evolve my physique to get better and better and better? And that's why getting the trophy is a great thing, but knowing that you improved on your last physique and that you made these improvements and that you're presenting yourself better, those are the victories that really matter, because those are the intrinsic victories. The trophy is extrinsic, but true value, true self-worth comes from intrinsic victories, from knowing that what you've done, knowing what you've been able to accomplish. And when you get those, and by the way, that's just not Greg spouting off. I'm just telling you, this is psychology and science around this, is that those intrinsic value, those intrinsic accomplishments are the things that produce fulfillment, which fulfillment leads to happiness. Those intrinsic accomplishments are the things that lead to greater self-worth, greater self-confidence, greater knowledge, and that can translate into success in the corporate world, success in your family, success in your personal life, in whatever way you choose to express that.
Yep. So hopefully this has been illuminating. Hopefully you got your questions answered. If you didn't, if you have questions that we didn't answer, please feel free to ask them in the comments or DM us through social media. And, we'll be happy to, even if it's something we don't know the answer to, we'll get the answer and we'll make sure that, we get it to you and provide you with the information that you're wanting and needing. So don't hesitate.
Yeah, last week's episode where we talked about what division's right for you, we just thought this would be a appropriate corollary to that, and we're flying a little bit blind because it's hard to anticipate all the questions that people would have on this that aren't already answered on the website. But we're sure that there are questions out there, so remember to like, comment, subscribe, leave your reviews. And those comments, please, if you have a question about the divisions that you can't get answered or have not been able to get answered on the NPC News Online site or through, that's really where you want to go to. Okay. I don't think there's another outlet. Don't go to some forum and say, oh, well, I was able to do this and I was able to do this. Then you're talking about how to game the system or how to get around the system. And that's just, again, goes back to what we've told you we're not encouraging anybody to do. Right. So I said like, comment, subscribe, leave your reviews, right?
Yep.
So it's time for the 3 Bs?
It is.
Okay. Be good to yourself.
Be good to each other.
And be safe. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to FitBody Lifestyle. We hope today's episode has left you feeling motivated and equipped to tackle your fitness goals, business challenges, and the daily dance of life. Remember to value progress over perfection. Life's tough enough alone. Find the chosen family around you to help you along the way.
If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite streaming platform. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at FitBodyFusion.